Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. My guys, you know I love Hiller. They take great care of my home. They can do the same for you on YouTube at Stillman and Company. Like and subscribe. Tell your people to like and, most importantly, subscribe. Now, if you're already subscribed, like. It's as simple as that. Like and subscribe. That's how we like to do it. Okay, we got a loaded show. Because today on the program, Easton Freeze is going to join us, A to Z Sports. I got to tell you, it's about now 2-3 times a week. There's a back and forth on Twitter between Easton and I. And finally, yesterday, I was like, just come on the show. And then we had a back and forth this morning with some of the stupid shit Easton was saying. So he will join us on the program today. We'll figure out. He knows everything when it comes to the Titans, according to him. He knows everything. The rest of us peons out there, we don't know shit. So he is going to come on the show, and when he comes on the show, he'll tell us everything that we are too ignorant to know that, again, he knows so much. I'm actually looking forward to it. Again, TDG says hit that like and subscribe. Thank you, TDG. Okay, let's get started with the news of the day. John Harbaugh is a New York Giant. I went to bed last night at about 8 o'clock. So my son goes to bed at about 7 every night. But for some reason, we think he may be having a growth spurt, something like that. He's been going to bed a little bit earlier, hasn't been napping as well during the day. They've gone from 2 naps now to 1 nap. So he goes to bed in the 6:30 to 7:30 range every night. He went down last night at like 7:10. Dad was in the bed at like 7:35. I was so tired. And he woke up at about 11 p.m. And when I woke up, I thought it was like 3 or 4 a.m. And I looked at my watch and I was like, oh my God, it's only 11 p.m. And as is the case, I looked at my phone and I saw there it is. Jim Harbaugh to the New York Giants. The Titans were supposed to have that big meeting. They were tracking Amy's plane. She came from Houston. She was going to pick up Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker. They were going to go and meet with Harbaugh in Baltimore today, and poof, all gone. John Harbaugh chose the Giants. As I had been predicting on this show all week. In the end, it's pretty clear. John Harbaugh was never serious about the Tennessee Titans. He was going to interview with them at his home. And it never got to that because the Giants sealed the deal when Harbaugh landed in Baltimore last night. I don't know what Harbaugh was looking for when it came to the Giants that they didn't offer him while he was there, but whatever it may be, he got it. He was not interested in being a Tennessee Titan. Because if he had any real interest in being a Tennessee Titan, he would have at least heard their pitch. He wasn't even planning to come to Nashville. It was all a leverage play. And now let's get to the why of this. Because it's really not that complicated when it comes to why did this happen? Why did this play out the way it played out? Why did it? The Giants gave Harbaugh everything he wanted. According to Jordan Schultz, they went 5 years and won $100 million on the contract. Who said that? Who suggested that was going to be the contract? So Kuharsky, both publicly and privately, had been saying, he wrote it on his website, he talked about it on the radio, he was texting with me about it, about, well, Andy Reid makes, hold on, let me do Paul. Andy Reid makes $20 million a year, I'm not going to go give it $20 million a year. And I'm like, Paul, you're the Titans. Like, if you want Harbaugh, you got to go to $20 million a year. You may have to start at $20 million and go up. And so when I saw the Jordan Schultz tweet that Harbaugh was 5 years, $100 million, $20 million a year, I just screenshotted it, sent it to Paul and said, fuck you. In a lighthearted-ish way. Harbaugh is running the team. Like, let's not have any confusion as to who's calling the shots with the New York Giants. I know Joe Schoen is the general manager there. Joe Schoen will stay on. Joe Schoen will run scouting. Joe Schoen will run the personnel department. And then as soon as the season is over, John Harbaugh shows up and says, all right, boys, educate me. But when it comes time to picking, John Harbaugh calls the shots. Once John Harbaugh gets Jackson Dart in his program and his locker room and his season, if he doesn't like Jackson Dart, he can get rid of Jackson Dart. That's why. They gave him the contract. They gave him the power. And at the end of the day, this is New York. This is a historic job. This is one of the finest franchises in the league over the history of its existence. You know, this is where Vince Lombardi came from. This is one of the finest franchises in the #1 media market in America. All these guys have egos. That means something. Especially, with all due respect, compared to the Titans. This is New York City. I remember when Peter Laviolette got the Ranger job, and he and I ran into each other at the draft because the draft is being held in Nashville. And I got along with Laviolette. I got along with Laviolette when he was the coach, albeit it was a somewhat strained relationship. The thing about our relationship was we could look at each other and say, fuck you, and both take it the right way. And I think we had a lot of mutual respect for each other. So Laviolette got hired by the Rangers, and we ran into each other at the draft, and we were chatting, and I said, you know what's crazy? Like, it's one thing to go to the Cup final as the coach of the Nashville Predators. It's another thing if you do that with the New York Rangers. Madison Square Garden, Times Square. And he looked at me and was like, I've thought about that so much. He's like, I didn't know if I was going to coach again after Washington. He said the Rangers called, and I was like, it's New York. There is something to that. So it's not that complicated. The second thing is Harbaugh told everybody that he loved Cam Ward and he loved Mike Borgonzi and that he was serious about the Titans. But when you saw his actions, he really wasn't, was he? And you know how I know that? Because he never even met with him. He wasn't willing to come to Nashville. Again, it's a great city. They have a new stadium. There's so much to like. If he really cared that much about the new stadium, he would have put a hard hat on and walked through it with Burke Nihill. He wasn't even interested in coming to town. He spent all day with the Giants at their facility in East Rutherford. And even after leaving the building without the job, he didn't feel like wasting his time entertaining the Titans cavalry just to hear their pitch because he knew he was going to say no. Now, I don't know if that means that he watched Cam Ward's tape and was turned off by it. I don't know if he actually likes Cam Ward. I have no idea if he even knows who Mike Borgonzi really is or wants to work with him. I just know that everything that you heard from all the insiders about how, oh my God, he loves Cam Ward. He loves the new stadium. He loves the city of Nashville. His wife loves the city of Nashville. He loves Mike Borgonzi. Yeah, it was all bullshit. He wasn't even interested to hear what they had to say. So I know Harbaugh wasn't serious about the Titans. I kept telling you, Harbaugh is not serious about the Titans. And I think most of you knew that. But the other side of this is I don't really know how serious the Titans were for Harbaugh. Were they going to give him full control of the team? I guess it doesn't matter, does it? And in the end, I feel like the Titans got what they really wanted. Partial credit from their fans and the media that they tried. They got this idea that, hey, they were willing to go all in for John Harbaugh. But were they? We don't know what kind of contract they were willing to offer John Harbaugh. I saw Kuharsky today put out there that, well, they must have been willing to go to 18 to 20 million if he was going to meet with them. But he didn't meet with them, which makes me think that the entire time he was using the Titans as leverage. And if you're using the Titans as leverage, the Titans can't call the Giants and say, we're going to offer him $8 million, so you only offer him $9 million. That's collusion. That's illegal. So they don't know what the Titans are offering. Maybe they didn't even talk money. Again, maybe Harbaugh never actually wanted to go to the Titans, but he wanted the appearance that he might go to the Titans. And if that's the case, it doesn't really matter how much money they're offering. It doesn't matter if they're offering full control because you're not even going to listen to them anyways. But again, we'll never know. And so I think there's an assumption that the Titans actually did a good job in wooing John Harbaugh, even though John Harbaugh didn't meet with the team, even though at the end of the day, John Harbaugh wasn't interested in what the team had to offer, had no interest in coaching the team. And again, I'm not even sure the team had interest in giving John Harbaugh what he got from the Giants. But the moral of the story here, and this should hurt your ego for all of 1 second. And then once you think about it, you should just be able to let it go and live free and easy. The moral of the story is that no matter what any insider or anybody in the media or any local homer tells you, the Tennessee Titans job is not considered a good job. The only time the Tennessee Titans job is considered a top job is when we are ranking the top 32. And yes, it fits within the top 32. And that's about it. That's just a reality. The Titans told every national reporter that this is a great job. But every time I hear a national reporter tell me this is a great job simply because they have a new stadium, I laugh. A head coach works in a new stadium 8 times, 10 times a year. That's it. I've heard media members complain about MetLife Stadium for years, and John Harbaugh didn't even think twice. So the Titans told every national reporter, everybody who, again, assumed, like I assumed, like many of you assumed, that this was a bad job, that this is a job that people don't want to take. They told everybody, this is a great job. In fact, the PR campaign has been going on for months. During the Titans-Chiefs game, Kevin Harlan, who I highly doubt lives on Spot Track like we do, was talking about the fact that this organization has so much cap space upcoming this offseason that I was like, man, the Titans are really pumping that to everybody. They got all the broadcasters saying it. They got the insiders saying it. They got Adam Schefter saying it. They got everybody saying it. So all these insiders told us this was a great job. Diana Rossini told us John Harbaugh loves Cam Ward. But we don't even know if that's remotely true. Having a new stadium does not make your opportunity attractive. And I think you need to understand that this is how the NFL works. People tell me the Steelers' job is not an attractive job, to which I say, bullshit. The Steelers' job is a very attractive job. They may not have a quarterback. They may not have any good players on offense. You may be replacing a legend, a future Hall of Famer in Mike Tomlin. But the Steelers' job is attractive, even though you've got to play Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow 4 times a year, because their owners don't fire the coach. Your job? You fire people who win. You fired John Robinson, won 61% of his games. You fired the great Mike Vrabel. This is not an attractive job. An owner who spends money is attractive to coaching candidates. The Titans don't really do that. Having total authority, dictating who your quarterback is going to be and who you're going to use the 4th pick of the draft on, that is attractive to a coach. Having a star quarterback, not a one day we pretend in our heads that he can become a superstar quarterback, but having a true star like Joe Burrow, or a true star like Lamar Jackson, or a true star like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. That's attractive. And coaching one of the premier franchises, Dallas, Green Bay, Chicago, Pittsburgh, or in a major American city like New York, is attractive. The Titans don't check any of those boxes. The Titans' job, I think, is roughly the same caliber of job that the New Orleans Saints' job was last year. And that's why you're going to get a candidate who would take any of the 32 jobs if offered to him. The same way Kellen Moore would have taken any of the 32 jobs. Jason Garrett will take any job. So will Mike McCarthy. So will Mike McDaniel. So will Arthur Smith. So will Matt Nagy. So will Jonathan Gannon. So will most of these guys. Maybe with the exception of Jesse Minter and Chris Shula. And that's okay. It's okay that you're in that category, because most jobs where the coach gets fired is not really an attractive job until it is again. The Denver Broncos looked like an absolute mess when Sean Payton took that team over. Jim Harbaugh didn't want to leave college for that. DeMeco Ryans chose the Texans. It looked like a mess. New ownership. People didn't know what to make of them. Nathaniel Hackett got fired after 1 year. Russell Wilson was the quarterback, and he looked absolutely cooked, and you were committed to him for years and millions, and you didn't have first-round and second-round picks because you traded them to get Russell Wilson. It looked like a terrible job. You played in the same division as Mahomes and Justin Herbert. And yet, they're the number 1 seed in the AFC. The 49er job was not an attractive job when Kyle Shanahan took it. Jim Harbaugh, who a lot of people had respect for, had been fired. Trent Baalke, who a lot of people don't have respect for, had been retained. Jim Tom Sula was hired for a year. Chip Kelly was hired for a year. Jed York, the owner, had to hold a press conference where he basically admitted, yeah, the owner probably should get fired here, but you don't fire the owner in the NFL. Hate to say it, but you don't get fired if you're the owner. Well, 49ers don't look so bad now, do they? Even the Eagles looked like a total mess when they hired Nick Sirianni. Remember, Doug Peterson was the coach, and they had won a Super Bowl, but then they had whiffed on Andre Dillard and Jalen Reagor, and Carson Wentz was mad at Doug Peterson, and he got benched for Jalen Hurts, and he wanted out, and who knows if Wentz is any good. And there were all these stories that came out that the team said, no, we actually like Nick Foles more than we like Carson Wentz. No, we actually like Jalen Hurts more than we like Carson Wentz. And they hired Nick Sirianni because they wanted somebody with ties to Frank Reich to be their head coach because they couldn't hire Frank Reich. And even then, Carson Wentz still wanted out and got his way. It was a mess. I bet you trade places right now to be with the Denver Broncos, the San Francisco 49ers, and the Philadelphia Eagles. So on one hand, it's kind of embarrassing that John Harbaugh strung the Titans along when the proof is in the pudding that John Harbaugh was never really interested in becoming the next head coach of the Titans. But that's business. It's not personal. And it's okay. And it's fine to admit that the Titans are not currently viewed around the NFL as a great job just because they have a new stadium. Newsflash, Atlanta and Vegas have a relatively new stadiums, and they're not viewed as good jobs. Why? Because they have bad owners, and they're being run by Tom Brady and Matt Ryan. Guys that serious football people do not think have the experience or the knowledge to be able to run a franchise. So there's not going to be a lot of people lined up to be the coach of the Falcons, or a lot of people, after the way Pete Carroll got dumped, lining up to be the coach of the Vegas Raiders. But again, somebody will take it because it's one of 32. And again, being one of 32 and being the reason that somebody takes your job is not necessarily a bad thing. Remember, Mike Vrabel interviewed with the Colts. They said no thank you. They thought they were going to hire Josh McDaniels. Mike Vrabel interviewed with the Lions in the same offseason. They said no thank you. We're going to go with Matt Patricia. I'd say Vrabel's a little bit better coach than those guys. So I do feel bad for the Titans fans out there that actually thought the Titans were going to land John Harbaugh. Those people that were like, oh, no, Jared, you'll see. He wants to work with Cam Ward. Cam Ward is so good, you will see. And I'm like, John Harbaugh is not going to coach the Titans. John Harbaugh is not going to coach the Titans. And I don't think the Titans are going to give John Harbaugh what John Harbaugh is going to demand and have the leverage to be able to demand if you actually want him to coach you. He's got the leverage. He's getting it all from the Giants. He's getting paid. He's going to run the organization. If he wants to get rid of Jackson Dart, he can get rid of Jackson Dart. If he wants to get rid of Malik Neighbors, he can get rid of Malik Neighbors. If he wants to get rid of anybody in that building other than the owner, he can get rid of that person. He is in charge. The same way Gruden was in charge of the Raiders, the same way Andy Reid's in charge of the Chiefs, the same way that all these high-end coaches run their franchises. And he wasn't going to accept anything less than that. But it's not the end of the world. And it's not the end of the world to look at where you stand right now and say, you know what? The Titans need to hit this coaching hire out of the park in order to shed the negative label that people have and the negative opinions that people have of them right now. But as we've seen in the league time and time again, you can do that pretty quickly. So that's the first thing. Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical here on the program. Again, I know there were a lot of you out there that are upset that John Harbaugh didn't want the Titans, but I think most of you kind of knew John Harbaugh's not picking the Titans. Let's talk about Hiller, our presenting sponsor. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, been in business since 1990, family-owned and operated. 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be, or the service is free. Learn more at happyhiller.com. I love saying this part out loud. Professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians that come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. And I'm going to tell you, these are honest people. They came into my home 2 days ago and could have said, oh, yeah, you got to have this, and it'll cost 10 grand, but you got to have it. And instead they were like, we can do it, but it's going to be a lot of work, and it's going to be really expensive. And there's another alternative that doesn't involve spending any money with us, but this alternative we want you to try. And if that doesn't work, then come back and see us. That was it. That is how you treat a customer. Honesty. It's easy. I mean, these project managers that go out and they do the evaluation, and these technicians that come into your home, I mean, it's not like they're working for free. So when somebody comes out to my home and they take a look at the furnace, and they take a look at the air conditioning, and they take a look at the humidifier I bought, and they took a look at the water lines and the electrical outlets to figure out how to make this work, and they say, you know what? Let's try this other option first. Go to a hardware store, get this, and that, try that, and then let us know. That is honesty. And that is the honesty that I get with Hiller. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Nashville Predators, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and the Tennessee Volunteers. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today. And by the way, some of you have put into the YouTube chat that you guys are patronizing Hiller. I salute that, and I thank you for that. Okay, item number 2 today on the docket actually comes from Paul Kuharsky. According to PK, he says that the Titans are ready for the second round of interviews, or at least they're ready for what that's going to look like. PK saying, quote, when the Titans trim their list of 18 candidates and move forward to a second round of interviews next week, they are expected to talk to 3 or 4 finalists. It will be, as Paul says, 5 tops. So I think that's kind of surprising. You know, if you're going to interview 18 people, I was assuming that you'd probably have a second round of interviews with 10 people or something like that. Nope. The second round of interviews will be 3 to 5 people, according to PK. Now, that is real news. That is not, again, the news that we had been hearing of John Harbaugh loves the new stadium. That is bullshit. That is leveraging and everything else. This is news. Hey, we've interviewed every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there, but mentally we're past that, and we're going to trim the list down to 3 to 5 people. Now, I have no idea who's going to make the second round of interviews, and I'm not going to assume that I know who's going to make the second round of interviews. But every second interview will include the 3 most important people in this operation: Amy Adams Strunk, Kenneth Adams, and Barclay Cunningham Adams. You know, the owners, the ones who are ultimately going to decide who's going to coach the team. And when it comes to these second interviews and they get Amy involved, I just remember the last coaching search where the Titans brought Brian Callahan in for a second interview and got their wee-wees all hard and didn't want him to have a second interview with the Panthers. And so they went all in keeping Brian Callahan away from Carolina. So as we've learned, once you get to the second interviews, anything goes. Now, I still believe in my heart, I contend that Matt Nagy is the favorite for this job. And personally, I don't have a problem with Matt Nagy, though I assume if I owned the team, he wouldn't be my first choice. Today, I was on Chad Withrow and Hutton's Outkick show, and Chad asked me, who do you want to be the coach? And every time somebody asks me that question, I have to remind you, I don't know these guys. But there are 3 guys that I would be comfortable with if they were hired as Titans coaches. And I'd say, okay, like these are real coaches and I can see a path. Matt Nagy's one of them because I would be comfortable that the general manager knows he can hold people accountable, and there wouldn't be any time trying to figure out what kind of players they're looking for or scheme fits or anything like that. You'd already know. The second is Mike McCarthy, because Mike McCarthy has coached and won at 2 different places, and Mike McCarthy has a Super Bowl, and Mike McCarthy's won 60% of his games, and Mike McCarthy, even though he's fat, is a good coach. Now, it doesn't matter if you're fat as to whether or not you're a good coach, but apparently it matters to these owners because Mike McCarthy's sitting there begging for a job, and it's not like he failed at his first 2. And the third would be Arthur Smith, and that's because I know Arthur. I know Arthur's a smart coach, and I know Arthur can coach offense because I've seen Arthur coach offense, and I think there is an element to Arthur knowing the Titans that does matter in this. So those 3 I would feel comfortable with, but I don't know these guys, and maybe Mike McDaniel is as smart as you guys say. Maybe Robert Saleh is the greatest leader ever. I don't know. I've never met him. I've never heard him. So I keep that in mind. And again, I try not to get too into what I think they're going to do and then project my own feelings onto what I think they're going to do. But the one thing that I have learned about Amy over the years is this. She always does the opposite of what she did the last time. For example, in 2016, she insisted that the Titans hire Mike Mularkey, the team's interim head coach, because she was comfortable with Mike Mularkey. John Robinson didn't know Mike Mularkey from a jar of Vicks. It wasn't as if Mike Mularkey had done what Rich Bisaccia did for the Raiders a couple years ago and go 8-2 down the stretch and make the playoffs. No, he pretty much did the same thing Mike McCoy did down the stretch here. But Amy was comfortable with him, and Robinson said, oh, yeah, okay, if you want to hire him. You're the owner. And they went with Mike Mularkey. Then 2 years later in 2018, she gave John Robinson the choice. Robinson went to her and said, it's between Vrabel and LaFleur. Who do you want? And she said to Robinson, who do you want? And in that instance, Robinson wanted Vrabel. And so they hired Vrabel. She leaned on the general manager this time, I believe, because it was the opposite of what she had done the time before, and she saw how Robinson and Mularkey had ended. So she didn't want that again, so let's get the coach and the general manager on the same page. Then in 2023, when she fired Robinson, she hired a general manager who would not demand complete authority. We saw how that worked out. in 2024 after she had fired Vrabel. She hired a coach who was the exact opposite of Vrabel. He was an offensive play caller and a genuinely nice guy. Again, the opposite of Vrabel. And in 2025, they hired a general manager who does need complete control. And somebody that someone in the league told me about Borgonzi before he got hired said, yeah, he gives me J-Rob vibes. Again, she's just hiring the opposite. So the opposite of J-Rob is Ran Carthon, and the opposite of Ran Carthon is a guy who, again, gave a person that I talked to in the league J-Rob vibes. You see a pattern here when it comes to Amy? So I say, okay, what is the opposite of when they hired Brian Callahan and the opposite of the approach? Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to hire an old defensive head coach who doesn't call plays, who's been a head coach before, just because that is really the exact opposite of Brian Callahan. For instance, Raheem Morris, that's the opposite. Older guy, doesn't call plays on defense, has experience. They're not just going to hire truly the exact opposite, but they're going to go in the opposite direction. I think they're going to look at Callahan's failings, and they're going to then take the opposite approach of what it is that they feel like Callahan failed with. And to me, that means, number one, no first-time head coaches. Because Callahan just couldn't do the job. Callahan didn't have the balls to do the job. Callahan didn't have the toughness to do the job. Callahan just couldn't do the job. And they knew that after they had hired him. At the beginning, he talked a good game, and he was great at going along to get along, everything they thought was going to matter. But then when it came time to holding people accountable and running the operation, he just couldn't do it. Well, you know that these guys that have been head coaches before and haven't just had their ships completely fall apart, you know Mike McCarthy can run an operation. So no first-time head coaches. I think a failing of Callahan's that they look back on and say, this is somewhere we messed up, was hiring someone that they did not know and hadn't worked with before. Rand hadn't worked with Callahan. Amy hadn't worked with Callahan. Chad hadn't worked with Callahan. Anthony Robinson hadn't worked with Callahan. Nobody who made the decision on the Callahan hire had worked with Brian Callahan before. So let's not do that again. And I think they're going to look for somebody who will work with the general manager and for the general manager and not just aligned with the general manager, riffing with the general manager, in love with the general manager, the way that Rand and Callahan were apparently long-lost brothers. So now let's play the board game Guess Who? Because I think we can start to flip over some of the people and say, okay, if they're not going to hire a first-time head coach, goodbye Chris Shula, Clint Kubiak, Jesse Minter, Jeff Hafley, etc. Go ahead and say, no thank you, moving on. If it's somebody that they've worked with before, then that means that this actually does give them, from their list of guys they've interviewed, this actually does give them quite a few candidates. Matt Nagy and Steve Spagnuolo have worked with Mike Borgonzi in Kansas City. Mike McCarthy worked with Chad Brinker in Green Bay. Mike McDaniel worked with Reggie McKenzie in Miami. Arthur Smith has worked with Amy Adams Strunk in Nashville. And Brian Daboll has worked with Dave Ziegler in New England. So you may not like Brian Daboll, but again, you've never worked with Brian Daboll. Dave Ziegler has. I guess technically, this fifth guy who's in the room, Dave from the Browns, he would have some pretty good intel on Kevin Stefanski. So my guess is the finalist for the job will be from that list. Again, Nagy, McCarthy, McDaniel, Arthur, Daboll, Spagnuolo, and Stefanski. Now, let me just say this. I do not know. Like, I don't think Steve Spagnuolo is going to make it to the final 3 or 5. But I'm just saying, I'm playing the game of Guess Who, where I'm just flipping over the cards. And I'm saying, okay, no, what about this person? No, what about that person? My guess is it'll be from that list. no first-time head coaches, somebody that they have worked with before, at least somebody in the group has worked with them before, and somebody who will work for the general manager, not trying to work in tandem with the general manager. And I still think the favorite is Matt Nagy, but I will say this. If Arthur Smith gets in front of Amy Adams Strunk, and his plan includes Jim Schwartz as the defensive coordinator and Mike Munchak as the offensive line coach, I could see that wooing Amy. Because now there's a lot of people that, hey, Jim Schwartz can coach defense, and Mike Munchak can coach the offensive line. And I know they got burned with the Bill Callahan when they decided to go that route, but this is Mike Munchak we're talking about here. So if Arthur gets in front of Amy, he could have an impact that could screw over Mike Borgonzi if his plan is Matt Nagy or Kevin Stefanski or whatever. But again, I think it's going to be somebody who's been a head coach before and somebody who they know. Okay, with that, I do not claim to know everything about the Tennessee Titans. I just feel like I know a lot of their patterns and their behaviors. Easton Freeze, A to Z Sports. He knows everything there is to know about the Tennessee Titans. So, Easton, I am glad to have you on the program. I feel like you and I get into it probably once every 3 or 4 days on Twitter. And so I said, you know what, just come on the show. So welcome to the show. You know everything about the Titans. Easton Freeze, A to Z Sports, as we put at the bottom of the screen, friend of Brian Callahan with a question. So, let's start here.
I knew this was a mistake. I'm
just saying, you know everything.
That's right.
Who are the Titans going to hire?
That's right. I don't think you are wrong. Well, I understand where you're coming from, thinking that Matt Nagy is the favorite. It seems that every single person on the planet not in Nashville seems to think that. And I do think a big part of that nationally is born of the fact that nobody really cares about the Titans and nobody is digging deeply on who the Titans might hire. They're just assuming that it'll be Nagy. It may be Nagy. You kind of lost me a little bit when you were explaining, though, the rationale of Amy going back and forth because the last head coach she hired, by your pattern, she would have been leaning on her GM's input. And so that would mean this time she's just going to hire her guy. So wouldn't that make it Arthur Smith? I would have to assume. I don't know. Neither of those guys are my pick for who they will hire. The guy that came to mind for me first back in October when they fired Brian Callahan and people were asking me who I thought would be a good fit was Robert Saleh. And at every turn when I've thought about changing my mind on that, I've had a gut feeling to kind of just stick to my guns. I think that generally he is just the kind of guy that they're going to want to look for, like you were laying out before I got on here. Somebody that has experience. It's very clear that that's something that they're interested in. At this point, I agree with you that it would be something of an upset for a guy who's not been a head coach before to get a gig, since the vast majority of their interviewees are guys that have been head coaches before. I think that he's the kind of galvanizing leader of men type, or at least that's the sales job in the room, right? That this locker room could really use. I think that he's the kind of guy that would endear himself to Cam Ward and Jeffrey Simmons when they speak with him. So, and he's also, from all accounts, when I talk to people who have worked with him, worked around him, he's a very magnetic personality. He's an alpha. He is somebody that commandeers a room. And I think that at least Mike Borgonzi I think he's looking for an alpha in this process, to be honest with you. And so he's my pick, but I really don't know. I was surprised as you were to see that the list of finalists apparently is going to be as small as it is. I thought that it'd be around a half dozen like they did with the GMs last winter. So for it to be 3 or 4 or 5 guys, I already thought that the majority of these 18 interviewees weren't actually serious head coach candidates, but I didn't think that it would be this few. So I wouldn't be surprised if this process moves pretty quickly. And, I'm headed to St. Thomas Sports Park. You're headed to St. Thomas Sports Park next week to meet the new head coach of the Titans.
So the one thing that kind of gets me on this idea of a Robert Saleh is nobody inside the building, to my knowledge, has worked with Robert Saleh.
Right.
The crossover of, hey, can this guy really hold people accountable? And if you go back and you read some of those Diana Rossini stories that came out from what was going on with the Jets, it put most of the blame on Woody Johnson and it put a lot of the blame on Aaron Rodgers, but it did not leave Robert Saleh, at least the way I looked at it, as completely innocent inside the room. When there's a guy like Mike McDaniel, who Reggie McKenzie has seen coach a team, or a guy like Arthur Smith, who Amy Adams Strunk knows personally, or Matt Nagy, I have a hard time believing that after Callahan, a guy who said all the right things and seemed when he came in like he knew what he was doing and didn't have a clue of what he was doing, I have a hard time believing the Titans are going to make that kind of investment in somebody that not one of their power brokers has worked with before. Am I wrong for thinking that?
I don't think that's crazy. I'm not certain that there's no history. If there is, it's not obvious. I'm with you that I'm not aware of any. Maybe it's one of those things kind of like the GM hire last year where we find out more on the back end of the hire, just how much, we knew that Borgonzi and Brinker were the guys that were actually brokering the details of the L'Jarius Sneed trade, but we didn't know of their friendliness really until the back end of that trade, or back end of the hiring rather. So maybe we find out on the back end that, Robert Saleh worked closely with this guy and this guy's best friends with Chad Brinker or something. So I don't know, but I'm with you that that's probably the way that they're leaning. Here's what's interesting about that to me, though, and it really is another Matt Nagy topic because I from what I understand, your opinion on this is, I agree with you that I don't fully understand why the general opinion on Matt Nagy is as poor as it is. I also personally am kind of confused by it because at the beginning of this process, I felt that same bitter taste in my mouth at the idea of Matt Nagy. And then when I started digging into him in a serious way, a thing that I had really not had any reason to do in my life, I started to question, wait, did I think this just because everybody seems to think this? And my answer is kind of yeah. I'm not sure if rabid Chicago Bears fans have just really poisoned the zeitgeist on Matt Nagy or what, but like on paper, his time in Chicago aged really gracefully. And I think in hindsight, we can look back at that sour taste and realize maybe our opinion of the quarterbacks he was working with at the time gave us a different perspective on that situation than we have now when we realize that those two guys stunk and they still stink. So I don't think Matt Nagy is this terrible candidate, but if Mike Borgonzi hires him, there's a part of media Easton that desperately wants to see it just as a social experiment because and I'm writing about this at AtoZSports.com either today or tomorrow, there is an unquestionable level of disdain that people will have for Mike Borgonzi that they have not had at any point up until now. Like, he is going to have to be willing to torch the majority of his goodwill. He's one of the only guys in that building that has any right now. He's going to have to be capable of convincing Amy to endure the battering that she's going to once again get for making that hire. And he's going to not just have to do that in the immediate aftermath, but I'm not so sure, because you know that when less than savory hires are made, you give it 5 days, 10 days, 14 days, fan bases eventually talk themselves into a lather on a guy and come
If it's
around.
Kentucky basketball, it's 2 days.
That's right, Mark Pope. I'm not sure that Matt Nagy would be that guy. I'd be curious to see how long it took. Maybe by the time we're in mid-August, people have finally come around on the guy, but he'd be voluntarily putting himself so far behind the 8 ball to get a win on this one. Now, it's high risk, high reward, right? Because if they come in and Matt Nagy is a part of Cam Ward being a supernova second-year quarterback and it's just gangbusters and they have a quick turnaround somehow, I mean, Mike Borgonzi will be revered as a god, right? He will be able to do no wrong, that he went against the public grain and did something good for this team. This guy is the best thing to happen to the Tennessee Titans since they moved to Nashville. So I don't think that he's going to do it because I think it is so high risk, high reward that he's not going to willingly turn up the speed on his when I get fired clock, which I think is what it would be. But if he does, it says something about his conviction.
So what you just said to me is why this job is a bad job. Like why the Titans head coaching job is a bad job, why the general manager job is a bad job. Last year when they were saying, we want a general manager. Now he's not actually going to run the team. Chad Brinker's going to run the team until we change our minds on that. But we want a general manager. And I know that when you're one of 32, people are going to want your jobs. This is exactly why this is a bad job. And I'm explaining. Because I agree with you. If they hire Matt Nagy, especially after they interviewed every Tom, Dick, and Harry, in terms of, we're really going to cast a wide net. We fired Brian Callahan in October, and we've done all our research, and I'm going to go hire the guy I worked with in Kansas City. If they do that, then the fans are gonna go nuts. Because for whatever reason, I think it's because he's ugly, but for whatever reason, Matt Nagy is not viewed the same way that some of these other offensive coaches are viewed who have not had success in their first stops. Stefanski has a losing record and made the playoffs just as many times. And
to be Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, people think he's great. And again, I think it's because he looks good. And so that's my theory on Nagy. But again, if they hire Nagy, the fans are going to hate it. They're going to hate it. And yet at the same time, I would say it to you like this. If Mike Borgonzi really believes that Matt Nagy's a good coach, and I asked him, I said, hey, the perception of Matt Nagy is he's a bad coach. And he said he did good things in Chicago, and he came back to Kansas City, and he did some really good things with the Chiefs. Let's say that's true. Let's say he knows Chicago's a fucked up place. Let's say he knows Mitch Trubisky sucks. Justin Fields sucks. So you can't blame Nagy for that. He had a winning record. He was a coach of the year. Unlike Mike McDaniel, he actually got along with Vic Fangio. That's kind of important. This guy is what I need for Cam Ward. This guy can lead the team, lead the locker room. This is my one shot. I would advise Mike Borgonzi to do what your heart's telling you.
Has to.
If your heart is telling you Nagy can do it, then you've got to take all that credibility that you've talked about, which I'm not totally sure how he's earned, but he's got, and you need to lay that on the line with Amy, and you need to say, Amy, I'm telling you this guy can coach. Fans, I'm telling you this guy can coach. And in well-run organizations, the owner would get up there and say, I believe in Matt Nagy. I believe in Mike Borgonzi. These guys are going to do a great job. And then they're going to put their hands over their ears and not listen to a single word the fans say. She can't do that. And so
I don't know. You think that they're going to hire him, though. So clearly you think that she can do that.
I don't think that. So I lived through Mike Mularkey. Mm-hmm. And I did not understand it at the time, but I still, looking back on it, I don't understand it. Mike Mularkey was a good coach of the Tennessee Titans. I don't think there's any denying that. Just, they were the worst team in the league. And in year 2 with Marcus Mariota, a backup at quarterback, they were 9-7. The next year they went to the playoffs, won a game in the playoffs, and he got fired. And I'm sitting here like traumatized from the Wisenhunt and Munchak years and the end of Jeff Fisher. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? This guy he won. And yet the fans hated him. And I think the fans hating him allowed Amy to hate him. And so if Matt Nagy wins, unless he wins the Super Bowl, I think the fans are going to hate him. And even if he wins a little bit, I think they're going to hate him because I saw it happen with Mularkey. So it's like, yeah, then Amy's going to turn on him. Even if he wins a fucking playoff game on the road at Kansas City. Like, she's going to turn on him because the fans hate him. That's why I feel like this is a bad job.
I don't have a strong take on whether or not she would actually acquiesce to the very strong recommendation to hire him. I do think it's a tall task. Like, I think it'd be a lot harder to sell her on this is our recommendation, Matt Nagy, than it would be to sell her on Kevin Stefanski or Mike McDaniel or literally any of these other serious candidates. But I think I get the feeling that if Chad and Mike were like, listen, Amy, like, he won fair and square. It's not close. He's our clear choice. We have all these reasons why it's going to work, and we know it's going to work because, Mike knows him really well, and so there's a relationship already there. I think that she would give it the go-ahead, but I can't sit here and say that it wouldn't be something that she would hold against them doubly, triply in the future if things went off the rails, or frankly, if things even sort of went sideways, right? Like, if the season starts and they're 1-3 through the first month, 0-4 through the first month, if things are ugly again, I think that it would accelerate all of those things through her. So yeah.
You wrote something at A to Z Sports that I'm not going to say kind of pissed me off, but it kind of pissed me off only because I feel like this is the local consensus. And I think this is such bullshit. So you wrote in response to the Titans not even getting a meeting with John Harbaugh, clearly being used as leverage for Harbaugh. You said, quote, the first of the silver linings here for Tennessee, you look better today than when the sweepstakes began. The national perception when Harbaugh was fired a week ago was largely that you're a volatile rebuild job like Tennessee wasn't the kind of place a head coach would land. Now, a week later, you look like the widely accepted runner-up in the chase for the hottest coach in the market. Plenty of the media openly debate and mock the validity of any chance you might have had, but the second place trophy in the ledger of the official narrative exists nonetheless. You got favorable treatment from the media machine all week, which is true, with national reporters singing the praises of your quarterback, GM, and war chest. Stop right there. I don't disagree with the fact that Titan fans through this process heard Jay Glazer say, this is a good job, and heard Diana Rossini say, he loves Cam Ward, and he loves Mike Borgonzi, and they all said the same stuff. I don't think real people inside the NFL look at the Titans today and feel any different about them than they did yesterday. I think they know what it was. Harbaugh he was so using you for leverage that he wasn't even willing to visit you. You had to go see him. And then he didn't even want to hear from you. I understand what you're saying. I think the Titans knew they weren't going to get John Harbaugh. I think deep down inside, they didn't really want John Harbaugh, and they certainly didn't want to pay John Harbaugh, but I think they wanted the runner-up trophy to get some partial credit for their fan base, and I think it worked, but I think it's bullshit.
No, you're wrong about that. They wanted John Harbaugh, and they wanted to pay John Harbaugh. They were upset to not get John Harbaugh. Now, I don't think that they were delusional and thought that, like, yes, he's ours. I think that they realized the uphill climb that it was going to be.
Was Borgonzi going to give him control? Because you know he's getting control in New York.
To the extent that he's getting in New York, I don't think so. But find me the job in the NFL that's giving you more control than the New York job right now. Like they're the only currently employed there are no currently employed GMs who are on less of a strong footing than Joe Schoen is right now. Even the Giants barely like the guy. So I'm surprised that he's still standing this morning. I thought for sure that all of that turmoil yesterday was largely Harbaugh trying to figure out a way to get them to cut him and hire the guy that he wanted. But he's just going to be he's a vestigial structure now. He's the appendix of the New York Giants, which frankly, not a terrible position to be in, honestly, to be an NFL executive and get none of the blame. He just gets to hang around and make a lot of money and work with John Harbaugh, which is probably cool. I don't think that Borgonzi was going to give him that level of power. I wouldn't if I was Mike Borgonzi. But I think that they were going to try to sell him on the merits of the job anyways. Now, I disagree with you on this job being a bad job, and I don't know where you rank it in the remaining openings.
I rank it 31st in the league with the Raiders behind it.
No. You think this Cardinals job right now is better than the Titans job? That's preposterous. No,
I think the Cardinals job's a better job.
The Cardinals have no quarterback and no prospects for a quarterback. They have an owner who is not equally, but also seen in the league as kind of a joke. They are in a terrible market. They're in a nightmare of a division that has no signs of letting up anytime soon. It's a bad job in Arizona.
Yeah, but
bad job.
You can do you can go there and you can be like Sean Payton, where you could take the job, and if you don't win the first year, it'll be Kyler's fault. It won't be your fault. If you go to Tennessee and you lose and Cam Ward looks bad, it'll be your fault.
I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure it will be Kyler's fault because I don't think Kyler will still be there. I think it'll be somebody new next year. But nonetheless, I think the Titans' job is of the remaining 8 jobs in the top half of the remaining 8 jobs. I'm with you that if they had even average reputation for ownership and stability, I think that they would be one of, if not the best remaining job. Probably not better than the Ravens or Steelers conversation still, but I think that's the thing that's really dragging them down without a question. I'm not sure why some of these. I heard you earlier in the show talking about they're going to end up hiring a guy that would only take any job that was offered to him. I don't agree with that. I think that actually some of these guys that are maybe lesser candidates in the public's eye would be less likely to take the job because. We'll take any of these retreads, but specifically guys that just got fired, like a Stefanski. I think Kevin Stefanski would be kind of dumb to take this job. I like him a lot. I would love to be wrong about that. But if I were Kevin Stefanski and was confident in my ability to be a coach again, I would not burn my historically one and only second chance on a place that I'm not sure I'm even going to get a fair shake. Mm-hmm. If I were somebody that was more confident in my ability to have a life after this job if it went sideways, or for this just to be my first job in general, I would probably, or it's been a while since I had my first job, and now I'm kind of more desperate for one. Then I would take this job if I was a huge Cam Ward fan and if I liked Mike Borgonzi. I would give it a roll of the dice, and I don't think it's that bad of a job because of how much there is. Like, it is kind of a blank slate. There's a lot of influence that you can have on this situation, even though Mike Borgonzi is the one in control.
So the last thing I have for you, Easton, is something that is just, it's up my ass, and it's really with the entire local press, but I feel like I'm going to put this on you.
Great.
I like Mike Borgonzi a lot more than I liked his predecessor because I thought his predecessor was incompetent. And I don't think Mike Borgonzi is incompetent. But I got to say,
I'm sure he's pleased to hear that.
You people, I mean, I hear about how Mike Borgonzi is such a good general manager. And it's one thing for Diana Rossini to just repeat whatever horseshit somebody with the Titans or Harbaugh's camp using her for leverage tells her. But you people talk about Mike Borgonzi like he's a really, really good general manager. The fans look at Mike Borgonzi like he's a really, really good general manager. I'm not saying I know he's a bad general manager because I don't know that. But he had an offseason, and in the offseason, they won exactly 0 more games than they won the year before. So why do we all just sit here and say, yeah, well, Borgonzi, that's a positive for this job. He's a good general manager. No. What J-Rob did when he took the job and they won 9 games after having won 3 games the year before, that's proof of concept. With Borgonzi, I have no idea if he's a good general manager or not. I asked him, I said, did you fail? Because you won 3 games last year. You had a whole offseason, a draft, free agency. You won 3 games this year. I mean, is that failing? And he said, well, the players played hard. I'm like, what? Great.
Yeah, was that the question where God struck you down?
Yeah, God was not happy about my question. And I don't think Mike Borgonzi was ready for that one either, because he starts talking about the players played hard. And I'm like, buddy, I don't think that's really like a sign of the GM that the players that you inherited play hard and they still suck. But again, why do you people think Borgonzi's so good? I want Mike Borgonzi to prove to me that he is good before I assume that he is good. And I feel like you people are selling me that he is good when he hasn't proven that he's good.
Well, I'm a big fan of patience and looking for proof of concept, so I won't begrudge you that. First of all, we have to remove fans, average Twitter guy, from the equation. Because you know as well as I do that fans will sing the praises of the latest cook in the kitchen up until the dying end, and then the minute they're out of the kitchen, they will hate the guy. So like this, every guy that has been here, that's how it was. For those of us that are not inclined to be that way, I'll only speak for myself. I don't think that he is for sure some great general manager. I think it's clearly, and it seems to be the case, you as well think this, I think it's pretty clearly obvious that he's better and maybe a whole lot better than the guy before. So that's like a good thing. He seems to be more in control of what he is tasked with doing. I think that all the accumulation of the things that I have heard both publicly and privately about the way that he conducts himself in his work and the ability that he has as a scout and a talent evaluator, those things seem pretty unimpeachable to me. You keep parroting this line about he won 0 more games than the year prior, which is a total straw man because they did not. I mean, technically, I guess they did, but they did not set out with the publicly stated goal of winning a whole bunch more games. Now, they didn't want to win
one more game. Can they win one more game?
Well, I know you watched every game this year, and I know that you know that there was a lot of shenanigans and hijinks this year that led to them not winning all those games. And I think that a lot of those things weren't entirely in Mike Borgonzi's control. You can only do so much in one offseason. And when I look at the things that he specifically did, the changes that he made, on the whole, I think that they are encouraging. So I'm not going to say that he's for sure some great GM, that he's some masterful operator. I think that he has earned the power that has now been in writing bestowed upon him. And I think that he's somebody that is going to get better at his job as he goes. And when I talk to him on and off the record, he gives me a lot of reason to believe in him until he gives me a big reason not to. And you see them winning no more games this year as this big reason not to believe in the guy. I don't measure GM success, especially when they take over such a brutal situation like Tennessee, in one off season, and especially when that one off season, they spent the entirety of the summer telling me and you and everybody on and off the record, guys, we might really stink again. That's just the way it's going to be. And then guess what? They really stunk again. So I'm supposed to hold that against them now?
They didn't improve at all. I agree. They did a good job of lowering.
They didn't improve at all in any category. The offensive line clearly got better. The quarterback play clearly got better.
They did not improve.
The future of the wide receiver room improved.
3 games. You talk about shenanigans and horse shit. That's the only way they won the Arizona Cardinal game was shenanigans and horse shit.
You're right about that.
I mean, they could have won less games. I'm not saying that, I think Mike Borgonzi's earned the power he's got. I don't. Now, I think that they should have given him that power when he got the job. And I think
who do you think it should belong to right now?
No, I think that he had a resume, assistant general manager of the Chiefs. This is how it works. If you're a good coordinator on a good team,
because we know you hate Chad. Poor Chad.
I mean,
Jared hates Chad.
Chad just hasn't done anything to get the power that he's got. He has no resume.
He's been in the league a long time.
With one organization, he was 8th in command, and now he's running the Titans.
Pretty good organization.
Or he was running the Titans, and now he's no longer running the Titans. As Charles Robinson said this morning on my old station, a demotion for Chad Brinker. I just do not. I think that, look, I think Chim DK in the 4th round is a good pick. He's a good punt returner. I think he's got.
I sure hope you think the All-Pro in the 4th round is a good pick. I'm glad to hear that.
He's a good punt returner, and I think he's got potential to be a number 2 receiver in the NFL. I think that, jury's out on Cam Ward. I think the situation they've put Cam Ward in has set him up for failure. I think he will fail because they set him up for failure, but they all seem to believe, and so we have to let the cake bake on that one. I'm fine with that. They got nothing out of Oladejo. They got nothing out of Winston, who played 3 games. That's not enough. Again, injured guys stay injured, and he got injured once again.
Hang on. He is not injured guy. He has suffered now 2 injuries in the history of his football career. 2. He's been playing football a long time, Jared. This is not the guy that comes in with a rap sheet that you're like, "Oh, brother." That's not the case.
Dumb guys stay dumb, fat guys stay fat, injured guys stay injured.
He's not injured guy. So you're mischaracterizing him. Let's also not pretend this is speculation on my part. But by the end of this Titans season, a whole lot of guys were getting shut down that probably weren't getting shut down on a playoff team. So the nature of some of these injuries, I think, are fair to question.
Last one. I say last one. I got 2 more, actually. I just keep you longer than I thought.
Bring it.
What does Sam Darnold have to do, whether it's in these playoffs or period, in order for people to just be like, you know what? And I understand it's spilt milk. You know what, Jared? You're right. The Titans would have been better off with Sam Darnold and the 4 picks that they would have gotten from the Giants in exchange for Cam Ward. What does he have to do in these playoffs? Is it win the Super Bowl and throw for 400 in that Super Bowl? Or is even that enough? Or are you people going to say, well, Nick Foles did that? I mean, what does he have to do?
Well, I don't know, Jared. You and me, leaders of the Sam Darnold fan club, I too have been transgressed by all these people that think Sam Darnold is a bum. I don't know if it has so much as it pertains to the Titans' decision. I don't know if it has so much to do with Sam Darnold as it has to do with Cam Ward. I think time will tell on that. It's going to be a comparison thing. It's not just about if Darnold goes and wins the Super Bowl, I'm sure you will be leading the charge on screaming about that for 3 weeks. I have told
the audience, and I have told Mike Borgonzi, I said I will be insufferable if Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl.
Well, don't worry. He's going to find a way to do the Sam Darnold thing and probably lose this weekend. So, and I'm not rooting against him. I like Sam Darnold. I think that he's better than people think. But you know in your heart, you're going to be sitting there live tweeting it like you've been wont to do at Sam Darnold games. You're going to be nervous that he's going to do the thing.
I cannot stand the Eagles. I cannot stand Sirianni. I cannot stand A.J. Brown. I cannot stand when people talk about how good Jalen Hurts is when he's really not that good.
Agreed.
And I was watching the game on Sunday being like, come on, Eagles! Come on! And I was watching the Carolina Rams game, and I was like, come on, Bryce! Come on! Because I don't want the 49ers after the Seahawks embarrassed them 2 weeks ago. The last thing I want to do is play the 49ers again. Now, George Kittle's out, and so, whatever. But, yes, I will tell you, I make the pick tomorrow, but I'm going to have a hard time picking Seattle on Saturday.
In a weird roundabout way, you wish that they hadn't beaten them as bad as they did 2 weeks ago, because you're like, there's no way the 49ers are going to show up and do the same thing. There's no shot. we've hashed this out about the Titans thing. You do this thing, Jared. This is a proximity issue for you. You act like all of the things that go on in the NFL is this big computer simulation. It's chess pieces on a chessboard. There's no human element to this. And the idea that, because you're right, there are a lot of people that don't realize that technically speaking, the Titans could have traded for him with a tag situation. You're right. They could have.
And they would have if I was the general manager.
We know. That does not change the fact that Sam Darnold has, I mean, after the season that he had, there was some influence there in terms of what his future was going to be. And the Vikings were also a part of the conversation about what they wanted to do. Like, the Sam versus JJ thing was not, let's not pretend this was some big cut and dry thing for the Vikings. They sat and waddled all over that situation throughout the summer. They were calling Ryan Tannehill at one point. And I just don't, and maybe the most important thing that I've buried here, the Titans made it very, very explicitly clear that they were in the business of trading for no one and nothing. So they weren't going to trade even a quarterback. They weren't going to trade any of the precious too few assets that they had in order to get a guy that at the time, let's also not rewrite the history of, at the time, the conversation was Darnold's going to be out there, Rodgers is going to be out there. For a long while until the combine, we were like, Matt Stafford's going to be out there. So there was this whole pecking order to the free agent quarterback situation and a pretty uncertain, at least publicly, rookie quarterback conversation that was muddling the whole thing. I do, and I reported at the time, there was interest in your boy Sam from the coaching staff at the time. I know Nick Suss reiterated that this season in the Tennessean. There was some interest, more so from the coaching staff than from the front office, but it was not going to be a fit. And I don't think, and this is what I think matters most here, I don't think that he was going to be this magical elixir that you seem to think that he would have been if he was on this roster. Would they have won 5 games? Like, how many games would he have been like, well, the quarterback got him to win today? 1, maybe 2 more of them. But I also think it's fair to say how many of those games would have been like, oh man, Sam Darnold is crumbling behind this terrible situation of a Titans team. There'd have been more of those than Cam Ward had. I feel good about that.
I think they would have won 8 or 9 games with Darnold.
No shot.
Yeah.
Not a chance.
Because they would have, first of all, like, I don't understand.
I'm not sure this team wins 8 or 9 games with anybody not named Patrick Mahomes this past year.
I don't understand how Titan fans don't understand this, but a quarterback who knows what he's doing can make everybody instantly better. Ryan Tannehill made everybody better the second he became the Titans quarterback. Jonnu Smith was better. Corey Davis was better. A.J. Brown was better. Derrick Henry was better. The offensive line was better. The coaches were better. Like Arthur Smith, I remember people screaming about Arthur Smith, and now he's lighting it up when he's got Tannehill at quarterback. And I think Sam Darnold's that kind of quarterback. And so I looked at it like Sam Darnold is a talented. He's not Mahomes. He's not Allen. And he's never going to be those guys. But he's already been beat to hell. So you've already got that out of the way. So you don't have to go through the beat to hell stage. And you have 2 first-round picks now. And you have an extra second-round pick in each of those 2 years. It's like that's how you build a football team. And then when you're ready, when Sam's 30, 31, and you get to that point where, well, we keep getting put out by Brady in the playoffs, then you can go strike for the young quarterback that you really like, and then you can sit him on the bench and develop him. That's what I'm saying. Let him be the Alex Smith of the operation. But I feel like Mike Borgonzi saw what Alex Smith did in Kansas City and then came to Tennessee and did the exact opposite. They didn't start at Mahomes in Kansas City. And I think Cam is probably more like Geno Smith when Andy Reid got there and he was in that draft than he is a high-end quarterback in this league.
Well, 2 things. One, our fundamental disagreement here is over the nature of Sam Darnold as a quarterback, because I see him as a very high-end, maybe the highest-end guy that is a trailer quarterback, not a tractor quarterback. He's not pulling his teams. He is maximizing what the team props him up to be. That's how I see him.
What did you think Alex Smith was, though? Did you think Alex Smith was a tractor?
No.
I mean, so that's what I'm looking for, Alex Smith, and that's what he was.
Right, and I think Alex Smith, I mean, there's not really a great example because he played on some pretty good teams until he was old and his leg broke in half. I don't think Alex Smith himself in his prime comes to this Tennessee team and wins more than 4 or 5 games. I mean, let's keep in mind that the Titans down the back half of this season were scoring like 24, 27 points a game on offense, and it didn't matter because the defense intentionally folded and was allowing 40 points a game. So you can't fix that if you're the quarterback. Here's the other thing is I am never going to begrudge a front office if they are convicted with a top 5 pick, especially the first overall pick. If they have full conviction in their hearts for a quarterback in the draft, this is good process, baby. The opportunity cost of a top rookie talent at quarterback in the draft is so far exceeding the upside of any other decision you can make in the entire sport. You have to do it.
Yeah, I just don't think that he has that much talent, but I think they talked themselves into it, and that's where he is. Last one for you, Easton. This time, I promise. Who do you think the coach is going to be? You know everything. Who's it going to be?
I'm sticking to Saleh. Saleh or Shula are the two names that keep rattling around.
So you're projecting your feelings onto the Titans?
Sure.
Because you want them to hire Saleh.
Well, honestly, if you gave me the lever today, I would hire McDaniel. So the answer is kind of no. I would love Mike McDaniel.
Why?
We don't have time. We don't.
Why? Oh, holy shit.
You have to have me back another time for us to talk about that. Maybe if they hire him, we can chat about it. I think Mike McDaniel is a dream, both schematically and in terms of just his demeanor for Cam Ward. And I would forego any of your culture concerns to bring him in and make him the head coach. I also think he has a better chance than folks realize to be a head coach again this year. So we'll see. But I don't think it'll be him. I think it'll be Saleh.
He's going to be the Browns coach. Easton, great stuff, buddy. Take care.
See ya.
Yep, Easton Freeze. I mean, let me say this. Mike McDaniel, you people just freaking love Mike McDaniel. Can't get over it. All right. I promised I'd hit some chat comments here. So let's hit some chat comments, even though, we're kind of running, a little bit longer than we normally do. Who cares? Casey says, I don't use Kalshi, but I looked at their current odds for the next Titans coach. Nagy, clear number 1. Number 2, Brian Daboll. Why? I really, to be fair to Amy and Kenneth and Barclay and Borgonzi and Brinker and McKenzie and Ziegler and the other guy, Dave, who I don't know who the fuck that is from the Browns, they've done a really good job of not really saying, who they're interested in or what they're thinking about or anything like that. So I think nobody has a real pulse for it. I don't get too caught up in what the betting market says. For some reason, people get obsessed with it. I don't. Trent says, did you hear Amy was allegedly ready to fly to Harbaugh's house? The Titans got played. The Titans got out of it exactly what they wanted to. They were never going to let Harbaugh run the organization unless Amy told Borgonzi to do it, and I don't think she did. They got the credibility of, hey, Harbaugh was interested. He likes Mike Borgonzi. And given the fact that they've been beaten to shit for the last 3 years, from a public perception, I think that they got something out of this. They used Harbaugh for credibility the same way that Harbaugh used the Titans for leverage. That, I think, is kind of simple. One guy says, how long until we make the Nagy announcement? I still think it's going to be Nagy, but I'm not, by any stretch of the imagination, as convinced it's going to be Nagy as I was 2 weeks ago. For whatever that's worth. Brett says, Easton said that Cam was snubbed from being Rookie of the Year candidate. Pressure is on. I saw people getting upset about that. I didn't know Easton was upset about that. But at the same time, you people need to get over yourselves. Cam was not good this year. At times, he had some nice highlight plays. He was not good. When I think of Rookie of the Year, I think of Javon Kearse, the defensive Rookie of the Year. I think of Chris Johnson, who I don't think got it. I think Matt Ryan got it, Chris Johnson's rookie year. I think of that when I think of Rookie of the Year. I even think of A.J. Brown in 2019. I don't think of Cam, who started all the games and for a rookie was okay, but for a quarterback was not good. You people. Mike McDaniel. I don't even know where we go from here. We are back tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Stillman and Company, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Thanks to Easton for hopping on. Like and subscribe. Tell all your friends right here on the 440 Sports Network.